My name is Mia Thompson. I'm 25. Last Tuesday at 2:47 p.m., I was standing in the staff break room at Greenfield Animal Hospital, staring at my phone while my brother Dylan screamed at me that I was a thief, a liar, and the reason our family was falling apart. All because I'd asked him why Pastor Elijah's coin collection wasn't mentioned at the will reading 3 hours earlier. You think you deserve anything? Dylan's voice cracked through the speaker. You? The girl who couldn't even bother showing up to Bible study? Who embarrassed him every Sunday with your questions? My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Through the break room window, I could see Dr. Sarah Chen prepping a golden retriever for surgery. Normal day, normal world, everything continuing like my entire life wasn't being dismantled in real time. Dylan, I just asked a question. The lawyer said there were personal effects. Personal effects he wanted people who actually cared about him to have, not you. His words hit like physical blows. Mom and I were there every single day during his cancer treatment. Every single day. Where were you? Oh, right, cleaning up dog shit for minimum wage. I worked as a veterinary technician. Not minimum wage. Not that it mattered to Dylan. Nothing I did ever mattered to Dylan. I visited him, I said quietly. Every Thursday after work. Once a week? Dylan laughed, sharp and cruel. Wow, Mia, what a sacrifice. I'm sure that makes up for the 30 years he poured into you, trying to make you into something decent. The golden retriever started barking. Dr. Chen looked toward the break room. I turned away from the window. I don't want to fight about this, I said. Of course you don't. You never want to fight. You just want to take what you haven't earned and play the victim when people call you on it. He paused. I heard him breathing, collecting himself. When he spoke again, his voice had that calm, reasonable tone that was somehow worse than the yelling. Listen to me very carefully, Mia. Pastor Elijah's estate is settled. The house goes to the church. His savings go to the missionary fund. His personal items were distributed according to his wishes. You weren't mentioned because you didn't matter to him the way you think you did. Accept that and move on. But the coins, let it go. The line went dead. Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. I sat down at the break room table. My coffee had gone cold. Outside, the November rain had started up again, turning the parking lot into a gray blur. I kept replaying Dylan's words. You didn't matter to him the way you think you did. But that couldn't be true, could it? Let me take you back 11 years to a Tuesday afternoon that changed everything. I was 14. My parents had just told me they were divorcing, and my mom had made it very clear that Dylan would be living with her in the new condo downtown, while I'd be staying with Dad in our falling-apart rental on Maple Street. It's better this way, she'd said, not looking at me. Dylan needs stability for his college prep. I'd walked to Second Baptist Church in the rain, soaking wet, not even knowing why. Pastor Elijah had been leading evening Bible study. When he saw me standing in the doorway dripping onto the carpet, he'd stopped mid-sentence. Brothers and sisters, let's take a 15-minute break. He'd brought me into his office, wrapped me in his cardigan that smelled like Old Spice and peppermint, and let me cry without asking a single question. When I finally stopped, he'd made hot chocolate, the real kind, with milk heated on his electric kettle and actual cocoa powder, not the packet stuff. You know what I collect? He'd asked, pulling open his desk drawer. I'd shaken my head. Coins. Started when I was 7 years old. My grandfather gave me a 1909 wheat penny, told me it was worth more than face value if you knew where to look. He'd held up a coin in a plastic case. This is from 1893, worth about $400. You know why? Because it's old? Because someone decided it mattered. He'd set it down carefully. That's the thing about value, Mia. It's not about how shiny you are or how loud you can announce yourself. It's about someone recognizing what's already there. He'd tapped the coin case. This penny was worth $400 when it was minted. It just took 100 years for the right person to notice. I don't feel very valuable right now, I'd whispered. I know, but I see you. And one day, everyone else will too. He'd smiled, that warm, crinkly-eyed smile that made you believe things could actually be okay. I promise you that, little light. One day, everyone will see exactly what I see. Little light, he'd called me that ever since. That was the first of 100 Tuesdays I'd spent in that office. While Dylan was at debate club and honor society, and all the activities that made my mother's eyes shine with pride, I was listening to Pastor Elijah's stories about rare nickels and buffalo dimes and the 1955 double die penny that sold for $72,000. He taught me how to spot mint marks, how to grade condition, how to recognize value that other people missed. This collection is going to be worth something extraordinary one day, he'd told me when I was 17, showing me a new acquisition, a 1916 D Mercury dime. Not just money-wise, it's a legacy. It's proof that patient attention pays off. I'd never thought about who he'd leave it to. It felt wrong to think about Pastor Elijah dying. He was permanent, like the church building itself. Except 3 months ago, he'd called me. It was a Thursday, 6:23 p.m. I remember because I'd just finished assisting with the emergency C-section on a Great Dane and my scrubs were still covered in blood. Mia, little light, I need to tell you something. His voice had sounded tired, thin, not like himself. What's wrong? Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. They say I have maybe 6 months. The parking lot had tilted under my feet. No. It's okay. I've had a good run. 73 years and most of them happy. He'd coughed, a wet rattling sound. I'm calling because I need you to know something. I've made arrangements, legal arrangements. No matter what anyone tells you, no matter what happens after I'm gone, trust that I kept my promise. Do you understand? I don't understand any of this. You can't. Mia, do you trust me? Of course I trust you. Then trust this. Trust what I've put in place. Another cough. And don't let Dylan make you small. You were never small. You're my little light. That was the last real conversation we had. After that, it was hospital visits and morphine haze and him squeezing my hand but not really being able to talk. Dylan had been there constantly. I had to give him that. Him and Mom, camping out in the waiting room, bringing food for the nurses, organizing the prayer chain. I'd come every Thursday after work, like always, sat with Pastor Elijah for 2 hours, held his hand, read him Psalms. He'd died on a Monday, 4:15 a.m. I'd gotten the call from the hospital while I was feeding the boarding cats at work. I'd sat down right there on the kennel floor and cried until Dr. Chen found me 20 minutes later. The funeral had been massive. 300 people, the church overflowing. Dylan had given the eulogy. He'd been perfect. Voice breaking in exactly the right places, funny stories that made people laugh through their tears, theological reflections that made the old deacons nod approvingly. Mom had sat in the front row dabbing her eyes. I'd sat in the third row, invisible. At the will reading earlier today, the lawyer, a thin man named Robert Crane with wire-rimmed glasses, had gone through everything efficiently. The house to the church, the savings to the missionary fund, Pastor Elijah's books to the seminary, his car to his nephew. And that concludes the distribution of assets, Mr. Crane had said, closing his folder. Wait, I'd said. What about his coin collection? Dylan had shot me a look that could have curdled milk. Mr. Crane had shuffled papers. I don't show any coin collection listed in the estate inventory. But he had one, a huge one. He'd been collecting for 60 years. It has to be worth... I'd stopped, realizing how it sounded. Like I was asking about money at my dead pastor's will reading. Perhaps it was sold prior to his passing, Mr. Crane had suggested gently, or donated. He wouldn't have sold it. He loved that collection. Mia. Dylan's voice had been ice. Let it go. I'm just asking. You're making a scene. Again. He'd stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. Mr. Crane, I apologize for my sister. She's been under a lot of stress. Mom had reached over and patted Dylan's arm. Hadn't even looked at me. That had been 3 hours ago. Now I was sitting in the break room at work, my coffee cold, rain drumming against the window, wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe Pastor Elijah had sold the collection. Maybe I'd built it up in my head to be more important than it was. Maybe Dylan was right and I was just being greedy and ungrateful and small. My phone buzzed. Text from Dylan. Stop calling Mr. Crane's office. You're embarrassing yourself. I hadn't called Mr. Crane's office. My phone buzzed again. Different number. This is Robert Crane. I received a call from your brother requesting that I block your number due to harassment. I want to be clear that I have no record of you contacting my office. However, I must ask that all parties allow the estate to settle without further conflict. Thank you. My face went hot. Dylan had called the lawyer and lied, told him I was harassing him, set it up so that if I did call now, I'd look exactly like the crazy person Dylan said I was. Something clicked in my chest. Not anger. Something colder. Something that felt like a door closing. Dr. Chen knocked on the break room door frame. Mia, you okay? You've been in here for half an hour. Yeah. I stood up, dumped my cold coffee in the sink. Sorry, family stuff. Want to talk about it? Not really. What do you need? She studied me for a second, then seemed to decide to let it go. Room 3 has a Labrador with a torn dew claw. Think you can handle the wrap while I call the owner? On it? Work. I could do work. Work made sense. Dogs didn't lie to lawyers about you. Cats didn't steal collections and pretend they never existed. The Labrador's name was Buster. He was a sweet old boy, 12 years old, patient while I cleaned and wrapped his paw. His owner, Mrs. Albertson, cried when Dr. Chen told her he'd be fine. I don't know what I'd do without him, she said, stroking Buster's head. He's all I have left since Harold passed. I thought about Pastor Elijah, about Thursday visits, about someone seeing value where other people didn't. He's a good dog, I said. You're lucky to have each other. Mrs. Albertson smiled at me, watery and grateful. Thank you for taking such good care of him. That night, I went home to my studio apartment on the south side, $975 a month, which was most of my paycheck after student loans. I heated up leftover pad thai and sat on my futon, scrolling through photos on my phone. There was one from 2 years ago, me and Pastor Elijah at the church picnic. He was holding up a 1943 copper penny in its case, grinning like a kid on Christmas. Those pennies were supposed to be steel because of the war effort. The copper ones were mistakes, accidents, worth hundreds of thousands. Beautiful mistakes, he'd said. Best kind. I zoomed in on his face. He looked happy. He looked like someone who'd meant what he'd said about promises and arrangements and trust. Trust that I kept my promise. The next morning, I called in sick to work. First time in 2 years. Dr. Chen didn't even question it, just told me to feel better. I drove to Second Baptist Church at 8:30 a.m., when I knew the secretary would be there but before any meetings started. Barbara Hendricks had been the church secretary for 30 years. She'd known me since I was a kid sneaking cookies from the fellowship hall. Mia, honey. She stood up from her desk and hugged me. How are you holding up? Okay. I was wondering, do you know what happened to Pastor Elijah's coin collection? The one he kept in his office? Her face did something strange. A flicker of recognition, then careful blankness. His coin collection? The one in the display cases. He'd been collecting for 60 years. Oh, honey, I think he sold all that a long time ago. I remember him mentioning something about downsizing. She was lying. I could tell because she wouldn't meet my eyes, and Barbara had never had trouble meeting my eyes before. When did he sell it? I don't recall exactly. Few years back, maybe? Barbara. I kept my voice gentle. Did my brother ask you not to talk to me about this? Her face flushed. Mia, I can't. It's okay. Thank you anyway. I left before she could say anything else. Sat in my car in the church parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel. Dylan had been here. Dylan had talked to people. Dylan was controlling the narrative. My phone rang. Mom. Mia, Dylan tells me you're bothering people about some imaginary coin collection. This needs to stop. It's not imaginary. Pastor Elijah collected coins for 60 years. I saw them. I know what they're worth. Even if he did have coins, that doesn't mean he wanted you to have them. For God's sake, you're not even in ministry. You work with animals. Dylan has dedicated his life to the church. He's getting his divinity degree. He's the golden child. I know, Mom. I've known since I was 14. Silence on the other end. That's not fair, she said finally. Isn't it? When's the last time you visited my apartment? When's the last time you asked about my job? You chose that job. You chose that life. I chose not to be a mini Dylan. That's my crime. This is exactly why Pastor Elijah didn't leave you anything. This attitude, this resentment. Dylan tried to help you, tried to guide you, and you fought him every step. You've always been so difficult, Mia. My throat was closing up. Don't cry. Don't give her that. I have to go. Mia, I hung up. Over the next 2 weeks, I learned what it felt like to be erased. Dylan posted a beautiful tribute to Pastor Elijah on Facebook, with photos from the funeral, quotes from the eulogy. 73 comments, everyone praising Dylan for his faithfulness, his dedication, his Christ-like service. I wasn't in any of the photos. People from church stopped responding to my texts. Not all of them, not the ones who'd really known me. But enough. Enough that I understood what was happening. Dylan was telling a story. In Dylan's story, Pastor Elijah had been like a father to him. In Dylan's story, I was the jealous, grasping younger sister who couldn't be happy for her brother's success. I went to work. I wrapped paws and administered vaccinations and cleaned kennels and tried not to think about rare coins or broken promises or the way my mother's voice sounded when she said you chose that life. Dr. Chen noticed. Of course she did. Mia, you've been off lately. Want to tell me what's going on? We were in the surgery suite, sterilizing instruments after a routine spay. I focused on the autoclave, watching the pressure gauge climb. Family stuff. The brother stuff? I'd mentioned Dylan once or twice over the 2 years I'd worked here. Never details. Just enough that Dr. Chen knew I had a brother and we weren't close. Yeah. Does this family stuff involve you being right about something and everyone pretending you're wrong? I looked up. Dr. Chen was watching me with those sharp, kind eyes that missed nothing. How did you know? Because I've seen how you work. You're precise. You notice things. 3 months ago, you caught that heart murmur in the beagle puppy that I completely missed. Saved that dog's life. She pulled off her gloves. So when you tell me something's wrong, I believe you, even if nobody else does. My eyes were burning. I looked back at the autoclave. My pastor died. He collected coins. The collection isn't in his will. My brother says it doesn't exist. But I saw it. I know it was real. Could your brother have taken it? I don't know. Maybe. But I can't prove anything. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. Then, what are you going to do? Nothing. What can I do? You can decide whether you want to live in someone else's story or write your own. That hit different than I expected. I don't know how to do that. Yes, you do, she smiled. You do it every time you stand up for a patient nobody else advocates for. You do it every time you catch something I miss. You do it by being exactly who you are, even when it's inconvenient for people like your brother. 2 days later, on a Thursday, of course it was a Thursday, I went to visit Pastor Elijah's grave, Mountain View Cemetery, Northeast Section, Plot 247. The headstone was simple. Elijah Morrison, beloved pastor and friend, 1951 to 2024. I sat down on the grass. It was cold, 38 degrees, and the ground was half frozen. I didn't care. I don't know what to do, I said out loud. You told me to trust you. You said you kept your promise, but I can't find anything. Dylan says I'm making it up. Mom thinks I'm jealous. Maybe I am. Maybe I just want so badly to believe I mattered to you that I invented the whole thing. The wind picked up, rattling the bare tree branches. I need a sign or something. I need to know I'm not crazy. Nothing. Just wind and frozen grass and the distant sound of traffic on Highway 14. I stood up to leave. That's when I saw Dylan. He was walking towards me across the cemetery, his peacoat buttoned against the wind. When he saw me, his expression cycled through surprise to annoyance to that carefully controlled neutrality he was so good at. Mia. Dylan. What are you doing here? Visiting Pastor Elijah. What are you doing here? Same. He stopped about 6 feet away, hands in his pockets. Look, I know you're upset about the will reading. I understand that. But this obsession with the coins needs to stop. You're making people uncomfortable. What people? Mom, Barbara, Mr. Crane, me. He sighed, like this was all so exhausting. I'm trying to help you, Mia. I really am. But you're making it very difficult. Help me how? By protecting Pastor Elijah's legacy, by making sure his final wishes are respected. He took a step closer. He wanted his estate to go to the church and the mission. That's what mattered to him. Not material things, not collections. If you actually understood his ministry, you'd know that. I understood his ministry fine. I was there for 8 years. Once a week on Thursdays. Very impressive. His voice was so calm. That was the weapon, the calmness. It made me sound hysterical by contrast. Meanwhile, I was leading youth group and serving on the deacon board and actually living out his teachings. But sure, your Thursday visits count just as much. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Acting like I'm the enemy. Acting like I'm trying to take something from you. I just want to understand what happened to the collection. Dylan looked at me for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, almost sad. You know what your problem is, Mia. You've always needed to be special. Mom's favorite, Dad's favorite, Pastor Elijah's favorite. But the truth is, you're just ordinary. You're a veterinary tech living in a studio apartment with $40,000 in student loans. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a perfectly fine life. But it's not special, and you can't stand that. The words landed like punches. I never said I was special. You didn't have to. It's in everything you do. The way you act like you're the only one who really understood him, the only one who appreciated his coins. Like you're the protagonist of some story where everyone else is wrong and you're right. He shook his head. Pastor Elijah saw through that. That's why he didn't leave you anything, because he knew you'd make it about yourself instead of about God. I couldn't breathe right. The cold air was hurting my lungs. He called me Little Light. He called lots of people things. It wasn't unique to you. Dylan checked his watch. I have to go. I have a meeting with the church board about the memorial fund. Try to move on, Mia, for your own sake. He walked away. I stood there by Pastor Elijah's grave, shaking, and watched my brother disappear between the headstones. That night I couldn't sleep. Couldn't. I kept replaying Dylan's words. You're just ordinary. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had built up this whole fantasy where I was special to Pastor Elijah because I needed to feel special to someone. Maybe the coins weren't even worth that much. Maybe I was remembering wrong. At 2:30 a.m., I got up and pulled out the box from my closet. The one with cards and photos from over the years. There was a birthday card from Pastor Elijah from when I turned 16. To my little light, keep shining. Love, Pastor E. A photo from my high school graduation. Him and me, his arm around my shoulders, both of us grinning. A program from the church's 75th anniversary service where I'd read scripture. A napkin from the coffee shop where we'd met for my 21st birthday. He'd given me a 1964 Kennedy $50. Silver content, he'd said, worth about $12. But I want you to keep it as a reminder. You're worth more than face value, always have been. I still had that coin. It was in my jewelry box. I pulled it out now, held it up to the light. Ordinary silver. Ordinary coin. Worth $12. Unless you knew where to look. Friday morning, I was restocking exam room 3 when my phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Mia Thompson? Yes? This is Patricia Vance. I'm calling from Crossroads Legal Aid. We provide free legal services for people who can't afford representation. Your name was given to us by someone who believed you might need assistance with an estate matter. My heart started hammering. Who gave you my name? I'm not at liberty to say, but I'd like to schedule a consultation if you're available. No charge. We just need to review some documents and ask you a few questions about Pastor Elijah Morrison's estate. I don't have any documents. That's all right, we do. A pause. Can you come to our office tomorrow at 10 a.m.? We're located at 847 Northwest Jefferson Street, 3rd floor. I'll be there. I called in sick to work again. Dr. Chen didn't even question it. Saturday at 9:45 a.m., I was sitting in the waiting room of Crossroads Legal Aid, bouncing my leg, trying not to throw up. The office was bare bones, worn carpet, mismatched chairs, motivational posters about justice and advocacy. A receptionist with purple hair and kind eyes smiled at me. Ms. Thompson? Ms. Vance will see you now. Patricia Vance was maybe 50, with gray-streaked hair in a bun and reading glasses on a chain. Her office was tiny, every surface covered in files and legal books. Mia, thank you for coming, she gestured to a chair. I'm going to be direct with you because I think you've been through enough runaround. 3 weeks ago, I received a package from a colleague at Morrison & Associates. Inside was a letter from Pastor Elijah Morrison, written 8 months before his death, along with instructions to contact you after his estate had been read and settled. My mouth went dry. He knew? He knew. She pulled a folder from her desk. Pastor Morrison was quite specific. He anticipated that certain items from his personal estate would go missing. He anticipated that you would be gaslit, manipulated, and stonewalled. His words, not mine. What items? Ms. Vance opened the folder. Inside were photographs, professional photographs, of coin displays, cases and cases of them, buffalo nickels, mercury dimes, Indian head pennies, seated Liberty quarters, a 1909 SVDB Lincoln cent, a 1916 D mercury dime, a 1955 double-die penny. The collection was appraised 6 months before his death. Total value, $112,400. The room tilted. He wanted me to have this? He did, but there's a complication. She pulled out another document. 4 days after Pastor Morrison's death, someone used his death certificate to claim early distribution from a church benefit fund. The death certificate was filed with the county on November 18th. Pastor Morrison died on November 15th. The person who filed it claimed to be the executor of the estate and requested expedited processing. Dylan? I can't confirm that without more evidence, but the signature on the filing matches your brother's signature from other church documents. She slid the papers across the desk. The problem is, the coin collection was removed from Pastor Morrison's home office between November 15th and November 20th, before the official estate inventory. Without the physical coins, we can't prove they existed. The appraisal helps, but it's not conclusive. So Dylan gets away with it. Not necessarily. Ms. Vance leaned back in her chair. Pastor Morrison was a careful man. He didn't just leave you an appraisal, he left you a map. She pulled out an envelope, old, yellowed, sealed with red wax. He gave this to my colleague 2 years ago with specific instructions. I'm to give it to you today, read only by you, in private. Would you like to use the conference room? I took the envelope with shaking hands. Yes. The conference room was even smaller than Ms. Vance's office. I sat down at the table and broke the wax seal. Inside was a letter in Pastor Elijah's handwriting. I recognized it immediately, the careful script, the way he dotted his I's. My dearest Mia, my little light, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And Dylan is already doing exactly what I knew he would do. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry I couldn't stop this while I was alive. I tried talking to him, tried to reach whatever good might still be in him, but Dylan doesn't hear love. He only hears documents and witnesses and proof. Do you remember the day you came to my office soaking wet, crying about your parents' divorce? You were so small, so certain you were worthless, because your mother chose Dylan over you. I gave you hot chocolate and showed you my 1893 Indian head penny. I told you that value isn't about being shiny or loud. It's about someone recognizing what's already there. I recognized you, Mia, from that very first day. You were never invisible to me. I've known for 3 years that Dylan was stealing from the church, small amounts at first, youth group funds, mission trip donations. He's careful, methodical. He thought I didn't notice. But I spent 40 years managing that church's books. I notice everything. I documented everything. Copies are with Patricia Vance at Crossroads Legal Aid, along with this letter. I also knew he'd come for my coin collection. He's asked about it a dozen times over the years, always casual, always wrapped in concern about my estate planning. But I saw the hunger in his eyes, the same hunger that made him steal from the offering plates. So I moved the coins 2 months before my diagnosis. They're in a safety deposit box at First National Bank, Downtown Branch, box number 447. The key is taped inside the back cover of my copy of Mir by C.S. Lewis, which I left to you specifically in a codicil to my will that Mr. Crane somehow failed to mention. Patricia has the codicil. She has the bank authorization putting you as the box's co-holder, dated 8 months ago. She has photographs of every coin, professionally appraised. She has evidence of Dylan's theft from the church, documented over 3 years. I didn't want to expose him while I was alive because I kept hoping he'd change. That was my weakness, Mia. I chose hope over truth. Don't make the same mistake. The coins are yours. They always were. I bought most of them thinking about you, about the girl who understood that value isn't about shine, it's about substance. Every Thursday you came to see me, I added a coin. Did you know that? 62 coins over 8 years, one for each visit, one for each. The rest of the collection I'm leaving to you because you're the only person who ever loved them the way I did. Not for what they're worth, but for what they represent. Don't let Dylan make you small. You were never small. You're my little light, and you're going to shine so bright that everyone will have to see what I always saw. The original codicil is with Patricia. The book is at the church office. I left it in my desk drawer with a note asking Barbara to give it to you personally. If Dylan got to it first, there's a backup key in an envelope with Thomas Morrison, my nephew. He knows to expect you. You are not ordinary, Mia. You are not second best. You are not a consolation prize. You are exactly who God made you to be, and that is more than enough. All my love, Pastor E.P.S. The 1909 SVDB. Penny alone is worth $18,000. Buy yourself something that makes you feel as valuable as you actually are. I read it 3 times. Then I sat there holding the letter, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. He'd known. For 3 years he'd known what Dylan was, and he'd protected me anyway. He'd made a plan. He'd left a trail. Little light. I went back to Ms. Vance's office. She took one look at my face and handed me a box of tissues. He knew, I managed. He knew. She smiled gently. Pastor Morrison was one of the most thorough clients I've ever worked with. He thought of everything. The question is, what do you want to do with this information? What are my options? Option 1, we file for the codicil to be recognized. You claim the coins, and we let the church board handle Dylan's theft internally. Option 2, we pursue criminal charges for the theft from the church and the fraudulent death certificate filing. Option 3, we do both. What happens to Dylan if we press charges? Depends on whether the DA wants to prosecute. Church financial theft, filing false documents, potentially fraud. He could be looking at 2 to 5 years. My brother. In prison. I need to think about it. Of course. But Mia, you should know that 3 church board members have already contacted us independently. They've suspected Dylan for months but didn't have proof. If you come forward, they'll support you. I called Dr. Chen from the parking lot. I need Monday off. Take it. Take the whole week if you need it. I might need to quit. A pause. Then, why would you need to quit? It's complicated. Family stuff, legal stuff. I might need to, I don't know, I might be in the news or something. Mia, Dr. Chen's voice was firm. Whatever you're dealing with, you're still the best vet tech I've ever worked with. You have a job here as long as you want it, okay? Okay. And Mia, if you're about to do something brave, I'm proud of you. I hung up and sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the letter. Then I called the church office. Second Baptist, this is Barbara. Barbara, it's Mia. I need to pick up something from Pastor Elijah's desk. He left me a book. Silence. Mia, honey, I don't think… Barbara, please. I know Dylan told you not to talk to me, but this is important. Pastor Elijah left me a book in his desk drawer. Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. Is it still there? Another long pause. Dylan came by last week. He took several boxes of Pastor Elijah's things. My stomach dropped. Did he take the books? Some of them. I can check what's left. Can I come by now? Church is locked on Saturdays. I'm only here to finish the bulletin. But yes, come now. I drove to the church going 15 over the speed limit. Barbara met me at the side door. She looked tired and guilty and sad. I'm sorry, Mia. Dylan said you were going through something, said you were fixating on Pastor Elijah's things because you were struggling with grief. I believed him. It's okay. It's not okay. I've known you since you were a baby. I should have trusted you. She led me to Pastor Elijah's office. It looked empty without him. The desk was cleared, the bookshelves half empty. The books that are left are in these boxes. Barbara pointed to 3 cardboard boxes stacked by the door. I started going through them. Commentaries, devotionals, church history books. In the 3rd box, at the very bottom, was a worn paperback copy of Mere Christianity. I pulled it out with shaking hands, opened the back cover. Taped inside was a small brass key with a number tag, 447. Did you find what you need? Barbara was watching from the doorway. Yes. I showed her the key. Barbara, I need you to write down the date and time right now, and I need you to sign as a witness that you saw me find this key in this book in this office, and that Dylan didn't give it to me. She didn't ask questions. Just pulled out her phone, opened a note, and typed. November 30, 2024, 2:17 p.m. I, Barbara Hendricks, witnessed Mia Thompson retrieve a brass key from a copy of Mere Christianity found in Pastor Elijah Morrison's office. The book was left in storage after Pastor Morrison's death. Dylan Hunt was not present. She showed me the note, then emailed it to herself and to me. Whatever Dylan did, I'm sorry I helped him do it, she said quietly. You didn't know. I should have. I hugged her. She hugged me back, hard. On Monday morning, I went to First National Bank with Ms. Vance. The manager, a woman named Grace Whitfield, checked my ID 3 times, verified the authorization form, and finally led us to the vault. Box 447 was larger than I expected. Heavy. Inside were coins. Hundreds of them. Each in its own protective case, labeled with date and condition grade. I recognized most of them from Pastor Elijah's office. But there were new ones, too. Coins I'd never seen. At the very top was an envelope with my name on it. Inside, purchase receipts. 1 coin bought every Thursday for 8 years, like he'd said. The dates matched exactly with my visits. The 1909 SVDB Lincoln penny, purchased the Thursday after my 16th birthday. The 1916 D Mercury dime, purchased the Thursday after I graduated high school. The 1893 Indian head penny from that very first day, when I'd shown up crying in the rain. He really did buy them for you, Ms. Vance said softly. I couldn't speak. We took photographs of everything, documented every coin against the appraisal. It matched perfectly. $112,400 worth of American numismatic history, collected over 8 years by a man who'd loved me enough to leave me proof of my value. What do you want to do? Ms. Vance asked. I looked at the coins, at the receipts, at 8 years of Thursdays turned into silver and copper and gold. I want to tell the truth, all of it. 3 weeks later, I was standing in the fellowship hall of Second Baptist Church, watching people file in for my Aunt Linda's funeral. She'd died of a stroke at 62, sudden and shocking. The family had decided to hold the service here because she'd been a longtime member. Dylan was already there, in the front row next to Mom. He was wearing his grief face, solemn, composed, comforting people as they came through the line. Playing the role of dutiful nephew and godly man. He hadn't seen me yet. I was standing in the back corner, by the coat rack, wearing a simple black dress, holding my purse. Inside my purse was a folder with copies of everything. The letter, the codicil, the bank statements showing Dylan's theft from the church, the fraudulent death certificate filing, the appraisal, the photographs, all of it. Ms. Vance was sitting 3 rows back, next to Thomas Morrison, Pastor Elijah's nephew. Thomas had confirmed everything. The backup key, the plan, the timeline. He'd wanted to speak up earlier, but Pastor Elijah had made him promise to wait until I was ready. The service started. The current pastor, a young guy named Matthew Chen, gave a lovely eulogy about Aunt Linda's service to the church. Then he invited family to share memories. Dylan stood up. Of course he did. He walked to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and smiled that gentle pastoral smile. Aunt Linda was a woman of deep faith, he began. She taught me that service to God means sacrifice. It means putting others first. It means living with integrity, even when no one is watching. People nodded. Several women dabbed their eyes. I've been thinking a lot about integrity lately, Dylan continued. About what it means to honor the people we've lost, about legacy and truth, and the responsibility we have to carry forward their values. He was looking directly at me now. He'd spotted me. His smile didn't falter, but something changed in his eyes, a flicker of uncertainty. Sometimes that means making hard choices. Sometimes it means protecting people's reputations even after they're gone. Sometimes it means accepting that not everyone will understand our decisions, but trusting that God sees our hearts. He was talking about me, talking about the coins, positioning himself as the guardian of Pastor Elijah's legacy, the one making hard choices to protect the dead from grasping relatives. I stood up. The movement caught everyone's attention. Heads turned. Dylan stopped mid-sentence. I'm sorry to interrupt, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. But I think this is the right time to share something about Pastor Elijah's legacy, since we're all here, since we're talking about integrity. Pastor Matthew looked confused. Mia, perhaps after the service? No. I walked down the center aisle. 37 people in that room. I counted them. It needs to be now, because Dylan is right about one thing. We have a responsibility to tell the truth about the people we've lost. I reached the front and turned to face everyone. 8 weeks ago, Pastor Elijah Morrison died. Most of you knew him better than I can describe. He was kind and wise and deeply faithful. He was also very careful, because he knew that someone in this church was stealing from the offering plates. Gasps, murmurs. Dylan's face went white. Mia, this is completely inappropriate, he started. Pastor Elijah documented the theft for 3 years. Bank statements, withdrawal patterns, missing donation records. He gave all of it to an attorney before he died, along with instructions to wait until his estate was settled before bringing it forward. I pulled out the folder, held it up. He also left me his coin collection. Not just left it, he spent 8 years building it specifically for me. 1 coin for every Thursday I came to visit him. 62 coins. When he died, those coins were appraised at $112,400. They were kept in a safety deposit box at First National Bank, Box 447. I am the authorized co-holder, as of 8 months ago. The documentation is all here. This is insane, Dylan said. His voice was tight. She's making this up. She's been obsessed with those coins since the funeral, and now she's invented this fantasy. Dylan. I turned to him. On November 18th, 3 days after Pastor Elijah died, someone filed a death certificate with the county clerk to claim early distribution from the church benefit fund. That person forged the executor's signature. That person was you. The room went dead silent. The filing signature matches your signature from the church's volunteer forms. The request was for $12,000, processed through an expedited channel typically reserved for emergency burial expenses. The money went into your personal account at Commerce Bank. I looked at Pastor Matthew. All of this is documented. The attorney handling the case is sitting right there. Ms. Vance stood up. Patricia Vance, Crossroads Legal Aid. Everything Mia is saying is accurate. I have the original documents if the board would like to review them. Thomas Morrison stood up next. I'm Elijah's nephew. He gave me a backup key to the safety deposit box and told me exactly what would happen. He predicted all of this. He knew Dylan would take the coins from the office. He knew Dylan would lie about them. He prepared for it. Barbara Hendricks was crying. Mia's telling the truth. Dylan came to the church office last week and took boxes of books. I didn't know why until now. Dylan's hands were shaking. You're all ganging up on me. Mia's been spreading lies about me for weeks, turning people against me. I haven't told anyone anything until right now, I said. But you called Robert Crane and told him I was harassing him. You told Mom I was making up stories. You told Barbara I was struggling with grief and fixating on objects. You created a narrative where I was crazy and you were the victim. But here's the thing, Dylan. Pastor Elijah knew you'd do that, so he made sure there was proof. Irrefutable, documented, legally witnessed proof. I opened the folder and pulled out the letter. The one in Pastor Elijah's handwriting. This is a letter Pastor Elijah wrote to me 8 months before he died. In it, he explains that he's been documenting your theft from the church for 3 years. He explains that he moved his coin collection to protect it from you. He explains that he's leaving everything to me specifically because he knew you'd try to steal it. I looked at Dylan. He called you out by name. He predicted your exact behavior, and he made a plan to protect me from you. Dylan's mouth opened and closed, no sound came out. I'm not doing this for revenge, I said to the room. I'm doing this because Pastor Elijah asked me to tell the truth, and because staying silent would make me complicit in Dylan's lies. So here's the truth. Dylan Hunt has been stealing from this church for 3 years. He forged documents to claim benefits he wasn't entitled to. He took property that wasn't his, and he tried to gaslight me into thinking I was crazy for asking questions. I turned to Pastor Matthew. The church board should have copies of all the evidence by end of day. What you do with it is up to you. But I wanted everyone here to know the truth, because Aunt Linda deserves to be remembered with integrity, and so does Pastor Elijah. I walked back down the aisle and out of the fellowship hall. Behind me, chaos erupted. Voices overlapping, someone crying, Dylan shouting about lies and betrayal and persecution. I sat in my car in the parking lot, hands shaking, and called Dr. Chen. How did it go? She asked. I told the truth. Good. Come back to work when you're ready. The cats miss you. I drove home, made tea, sat on my futon and stared at the wall. It took 4 days for the fallout to complete. The church board met in emergency session. Dylan was removed from all leadership positions. The DA opened an investigation into the stolen funds, And the fraudulent death certificate. Dylan hired a lawyer. Mom called me screaming about how I'd ruined his life, then hung up and didn't call back. Ms. Vance got the codicil recognized. The coin collection was officially transferred to me. I moved it to a more secure bank, kept one coin out, the 1893 Indian head penny from that first rainy Thursday, and put the rest in storage while I figured out what to do with them. Thomas Morrison called to tell me that 15 people from the church had reached out to apologize for believing Dylan's version of events. Barbara sent me a card with a pressed flower and a note. I should have listened to you. I'm sorry. Dr. Chen gave me a raise. 6 months later, I was sitting in a different apartment. 2-bedroom, better neighborhood, $1,450 a month, but worth it for the natural light and the dishwasher. I'd sold 20 coins from the collection for $43,000, paid off my student loans, and put the rest in a fund for veterinary school. Turns out I wanted to be a doctor after all, just not the kind Dylan would approve of. I had a cat now, Rescue Tabby, 12 years old, missing one eye. Her name was Light. On my desk, in a small frame, was the 1893 Indian head penny. Next to it, a photo of me and Pastor Elijah from that church picnic, both of us grinning. My phone buzzed. Text from Thomas Morrison. Church voted to establish the Elijah Morrison Memorial Scholarship for students pursuing service careers. Thought you'd want to know. I texted back. He would have loved that. Then I picked up Light, sat on my couch, and looked out the window at the evening light turning everything gold. I thought about what Pastor Elijah had said all those years ago, about value, about someone recognizing what was already there. I thought about Dylan, facing trial, his golden child status finally tarnished. I thought about my mother, who still hadn't called. And I thought about the fact that I didn't need them to see my value anymore. Because I saw it. Pastor Elijah had seen it. And that was enough. If you're watching this and you've ever been told you're ordinary, or second best, or not worth the trouble, I want you to know something. The people who say that are usually the ones most threatened by your potential. They need you to be small because your bigness reminds them of their own smallness. But you don't owe anyone smallness. You don't owe anyone silence. Type "I choose truth" in the comments if you've ever had to speak up even when everyone told you to stay quiet. Or type "I'm still finding my voice" if you're working on it. Both are valid. Both are brave. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you're worth more than face value. You always have been.